My dad called it the midnight paper. It was exactly what it sounded like, a strange kind of newspaper that would show up at some homes at midnight on the dot. Every Wednesday and Friday for us, but on other nights for other houses. I loved hearing about it. We would sit in his office late at night, late for me at that age, and he would talk about it. But I never saw one. Before we dive into the story, tell me from which country you're listening and what time it is there right now. He never told me the stories that were supposedly printed on it. So after a while, I lost interest. I grew out of it. Until now. After the funeral, I decided to stay at my parents' for a while, sorting bills, wondering what to do with the mountain of belongings nobody would want. It was a Friday. Midnight came. I sat in his office over a pile of unpaid hospital bills when I heard it. 3 knocks at the front door. Midnight, on the dot. I looked at my watch. Midnight on the dot. Strange. I went to the front door and looked through the peephole. Nothing. No one. A dozen scenarios ran through my mind. Maybe a kid playing ding-dong ditch. But then why didn't they ring the doorbell? I unlocked the front door and pulled it open slowly. There, on the worn welcome mat, was a newspaper. At least that's what it looked like to me. Slowly, tentatively, I picked it up with 2 fingers like it was toxic. It was entirely black, both the paper and the strings binding it into a roll. Then I made the worst mistake of my life. I took it inside. On my dad's office desk, I laid it out. With a knife from the kitchen, I cut the knots on the black strings. The newspaper unrolled itself slowly. It was thin, really only 1 page in length, and there, written in blocky white letters, was the title, The Midnight Paper. This was the headline on the page and the story written below it. Living and Dying on the Ledge, Urban Legend or Dangerous Social Media Challenge. You may not have heard about it, but your kids have. That's how it started. The article described a strange building on the edge of town, 15 stories tall, hiding a terrifying secret on its rooftop. The tenants knew the story all too well. Last December, a girl, her name withheld, attempted to take her own life by jumping off the rooftop down to the asphalt 150 feet below. Tragic, but not uncommon. Except this wasn't ordinary, not because of her reasons, but because of what happened when she climbed over the railing. As soon as she lifted 1 foot off the edge, something hit her mind. Images. Her father crying in her bedroom. Her funeral. Her broken body in a dress, bloated and stitched. She pulled her foot back in terror. But then, she tried again. The images returned. But this time, they were different. She saw herself wearing a graduation gown. Saw herself walking down the aisle to her husband. Saw herself holding her first child. Each time she lifted her foot, a new version of her life appeared. Graduation, marriage, a baby, a new home. Then darker things too. Illness, accidents, arguments, everything a life can hold. She spent hours on that rooftop, dangling between futures. In the end, she stepped down and went home. But the story didn't end there. The article claimed she wasn't the only one. Other tenants had climbed the ledge, seen visions of lives they hadn't lived, choices they hadn't made. Some stayed up there for days, unable to decide. Some never came down. The article ended with a warning. If your child speaks of the ledge game, take it seriously. They may already be playing. I leaned back, chills racing down my arms. I sat staring at the paper. The room was silent except for the hum of the desk lamp. I had no words, no clue what I had just read. I tried to turn the page, but there was only one, thin, black, soft like ash between my fingers. And then it began to smoke, a thin stream of black rising from the paper's edges, curling upward into the air. I coughed, covering my mouth. It smelled faintly metallic, like burnt wires. I quickly rolled the sheet back up and shoved it into the desk drawer, but the smell lingered, faint, clinging. I sat there breathing heavy. My dad had talked about this for years. I thought it was a story, some silly obsession. But no, he hadn't been lying. The midnight paper was real, and I had just invited it into the house, I couldn't sleep that night. Every creak of the house set me on edge. I kept hearing the knocks replay in my head, 3 of them, sharp, final. By morning, I convinced myself it was all a trick of grief. I buried myself in chores, bills, the endless lists left behind. But when night came again, I found myself staring at the desk drawer. The smell of burnt metal still clung to the wood. At midnight sharp, 3 more knocks. This time I didn't move. I sat frozen in the office, my ears ringing. Then silence. I forced myself up, walked to the door, nothing on the mat. I breathed relief until I turned back. There, on the hall table, lay another rolled newspaper. I hadn't even heard it placed there. My hands trembled as I reached for it. The black paper seemed heavier, thicker this time, and once more, against all reason, I opened it. The headline screamed in white, "Fire takes researcher's life in mysterious blaze." The article named him Dr. Marius Adler, a physicist living across town. According to the piece, his lab burned down with him inside. Neighbors said the fire erupted with no warning, no alarms, no smoke beforehand. 1 minute silence, the next an inferno. I knew the name. I'd seen him once or twice in the neighborhood, but there was no fire on the news, nothing online, no one speaking about it. The paper described it in detail, though. His notes scorched, his body unrecoverable, his experiments lost. I slammed it shut, heart racing. My phone buzzed on the desk. A news alert. Breaking. Fire consumes Adler Laboratory. 1 casualty confirmed. I dropped the phone. The room spun. The paper hadn't lied. It told the future, and if it could do that, what else could it show? I stayed up the rest of the night pacing. Coffee didn't help, nor did reason. My father had left me in a house haunted by a newspaper. I wanted to throw it away, burn it, shred it. But some part of me feared what might happen if I did. The drawer rattled when I touched it. The paper moved inside, rustling like it was alive. By morning, I decided to dig. I tore through my dad's boxes, his notebooks stacked like bricks. Every entry circled around the same thing: dates, names, events, all traced back to the paper. He'd been logging every headline for years. Some came true, others were too strange to check. But one note was underlined 3 times: "Do not let it choose for you." I didn't know what it meant, but I was starting to understand why he never told me the stories. That evening, I couldn't resist. I opened the drawer and unrolled the black paper again. This time the headline read, "Local girl reported missing. Search expands to Riverbank." Her name was Clara Weiss. 17. Last seen walking home from school. The photo showed a pale girl with dark hair and distant eyes. I stared at it, feeling cold crawl across my arms. 2 hours later, my phone lit up. A real news bulletin. Clara Weiss reported missing, last seen near Riverbank Road. My chest tightened. The paper was always ahead, its words dripping into reality. I wanted to warn someone, anyone, but who would believe me? I sat in the office, the paper spread open, my father's words echoing in my skull. "Do not let it choose for you." But what choice did I have? The knocks came again. 3. Always 3. And I already knew there would be another paper waiting. I opened the door with shaking hands. Nothing there. But when I turned back, the paper lay on the staircase. Black, heavy, waiting. I brought it into the office, my chest pounding, unrolled it. This time, the headline was darker than ever. "Suicide at 15th story rooftop. Second incident this year." The article described it detail by detail. Same building, same ledge. Another person drawn to it like a moth. I slammed the desk, shouting to no one. I couldn't keep reading this. I couldn't let it sink deeper into me. But the images from the story lingered. A figure climbing over the edge, visions flooding their mind, lives unlived flashing like film reels. I rubbed my temples, the migraine returning with brutal force. And in that moment, I realized something terrible. The paper wasn't just reporting. It was pulling me closer, inch by inch, toward the ledge itself. I stopped leaving the house. Days blurred into nights, but the knocks never failed. Every Wednesday, every Friday, 3 raps at midnight, and always another paper waiting somewhere inside. I tried to ignore them, stacked them in boxes, sealed the drawers shut. But the smell of smoke seeped through the house, sharp and bitter. I dreamed of headlines. I dreamed of lives I didn't want to see. The strangest thing was how familiar the stories became. Faces in the photographs looked at me like they knew me. When I passed a mirror, I half expected to see myself on the front page. I called friends, family, anyone who might ground me, but I never spoke about the paper. How could I? They would think I was losing my mind, and maybe I was. But deep down, I knew one thing for certain: the paper wasn't done with me yet. The next paper didn't come with a knock. I found it waiting on my pillow when I woke. I nearly screamed. The headline: Man found dead in parents' home, suspected overdose. The man had my initials, my age, my city. The details blurred until I could hardly breathe. It was me, or it could be me. The article laid it out like prophecy, describing a lifeless body discovered by neighbors after days of silence. I shoved it under the bed and sat shaking, my palms slick. This was what my father meant. Do not let it choose for you. It wanted me. It wanted my story on its front page. I locked myself in the office, surrounded by his notes, desperately searching for answers. Page after page of his handwriting, drawings of ledges, clocks, doors, names of strangers, and one final phrase scrawled across the last notebook: "The paper writes you if you let it." Sleep deserted me. Every creak of the house, every whisper of wind through the shutters felt like the paper moving closer. I decided to test it. I waited until midnight. When the 3 knocks came, I ignored them. I stayed in bed, blankets pulled up, eyes fixed on the ceiling. But when I woke at dawn, the paper was there anyway, on the kitchen table, rolled neatly, black as tar. I screamed into the empty house. No escape, no hiding. This one's headline was worse: Collision on highway leaves 2 dead, 1 injured. I skimmed the names. Strangers, but I couldn't shake the feeling I was meant to know them. That night, the news confirmed it. The crash happened exactly as written. Exact names, exact details. I fell to my knees, choking on the air. The paper wasn't predicting, it was commanding, and I was trapped in its script. I started counting the days, scratching them into the desk with my father's knife. 1, 2, 3. Each mark another reminder that I was still here. The papers piled up around me, black towers rising from the floor. I didn't touch them anymore, didn't read past the headlines, but still the knowledge seeped in, as if the words carved themselves into me. The house smelled of smoke constantly now, metallic and bitter. I tried to leave once, packed a bag, got in the car, turned the key, but the dashboard clock froze at midnight, no matter the hour. The radio hissed static until 3 knocks echoed inside the car itself. I ran back into the house, trembling, breath ragged. There was no leaving. I collapsed at the desk, staring at the last note my father left. The paper finds you, always. And I knew then that whatever fate he met, it had been by its hand. The 15th story building appeared in my dreams. I stood at the edge, the wind tearing at my clothes. The city stretched below, lights flickering like dying stars. When I leaned forward, visions crashed into me. My funeral, faces I loved, weeping, my father's grave beside mine. Then the scenes shifted. Me alive, years older, sitting with a family I didn't know. Laughter, warmth, children calling my name. Another shift. Me in a hospital bed, tubes in my arms, the slow beep of a machine. It went on and on. Reel after reel of possible lives. When I woke, my legs ached as if I'd been standing there all night. The next paper waited on the desk. Headline blank, page empty. For the first time, it wanted me to write. My hands hovered, trembling, over the black ash of the page, and I understood the truth. It wasn't showing me possibilities anymore. It was asking me to choose. I refused to touch the blank page. I shoved it into the drawer, slammed it shut, and locked it. But that night, the dreams returned. I was back on the ledge, city stretching far below. This time, a voice whispered behind me, "Write it." I spun around, but no one was there. Only shadows shifting in the dark. I woke drenched in sweat. The drawer rattled, the desk trembling as if the paper itself was breathing. I yanked it open. The sheet had filled itself overnight. Headline, "Choice at the Edge." No article, just those words. I stared at them until dawn, unable to move. What did it want? A choice of life? Death? I thought about my father, the way he wasted away, hunched over these very pages. He hadn't chosen. The paper had chosen for him, and if I didn't resist soon, it would do the same to me. I tried destroying one. I lit a match, held it to the corner, and watched the black roll catch. The flame swallowed it, curling the edges, turning it to ash. But when I looked back at the drawer, another copy waited inside, whole, untouched. My hands shook violently. The fire alarm blared, even though the smoke had already vanished. I ripped the batteries out, but the shrill ringing continued in my ears. I slammed the window open, threw the burnt remains outside. When I turned, the paper was back on the desk, unrolled, headline glowing faint white. "Fire cannot end what is written." I staggered back, mouth dry. It had seen me. It knew me. The rules weren't mine to make. The paper existed beyond reason, beyond destruction. And now I realized the most terrifying thing of all. I wasn't just reading its stories anymore. I was inside them. The next headline cut deeper. "Body found near riverbank, investigation ongoing." The article described every detail of Clara Weiss's disappearance, except now it listed the location of her body. I felt sick. The police hadn't reported this yet, but I knew the news would break. And when it did, the paper would be right again. I thought about going to the authorities, handing them the stack of black pages. But what would I say? That a cursed newspaper predicted tragedy? That my father died chasing its truth? They would lock me away, and the paper would still follow. I sat in silence, watching the letters pulse faintly on the page. I wanted to save her, to change it, but the memory of my father's warning held me still. Do not let it choose for you. And yet, no matter how I resisted, the stories were tightening around me like a noose. 2 days later, the news confirmed it. Clara Weiss's body had been found by the riverbank. The exact details matched word for word. I couldn't take it anymore. I ransacked the office, searching for answers my father might have hidden. At the back of a drawer, taped beneath the wood, I found a sealed envelope. My name scrawled across the front. Hands trembling, I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, different from the rest. Not black, but yellowed, fragile with age. In his handwriting, the paper feeds on choices not taken. It shows you every path, every end. Ignore it, and it will force your hand. The only escape is refusal, but refusal costs everything. I sank into the chair, the words searing into me. What did refusal mean? Burning them hadn't worked. Ignoring them hadn't worked. Was death the only refusal left? The house grew unbearable. Every clock stopped at midnight. Every shadow stretched longer than it should. I barely ate, barely slept. The paper consumed everything. One evening, I tried leaving again. I walked to the front door, suitcase in hand, but when I opened it, the world outside was gone. Only darkness. A void swallowing the street, the sky, everything. The house floated in endless black. I stumbled back, heart hammering, slamming the door shut. And there, waiting in the hallway, lay the next issue. Rolled tight, black as night. I unwrapped it with shaking hands. The headline read, "Man Trapped in His Own Home." No details, no article. Just those words. I screamed, the sound tearing out of me until my throat burned. The house answered with silence. The truth clawed its way into me. I was already written, already trapped in its pages. I stopped checking the windows. Outside was nothing but dark. The only world left to me was the house and the paper. I tried distracting myself, turning on the TV, scrolling through my phone. But every channel showed static. Every app froze. The clock stuck at 12 étoiles. I smashed the phone against the wall until it shattered. Still, the ringing of 3 knocks echoed through the halls. I pressed my hands over my ears, tears spilling, whispering for it to stop. But when I opened my eyes, the paper was in my lap, unrolled, waiting. The headline this time was almost gentle. Future still unwritten. No body, no death. Just those words. For a moment, I let myself believe it, that maybe there was a way out. But I could feel the trap closing tighter. The paper wasn't offering me freedom. It was luring me closer, step by step, to the end it wanted. I returned to my father's notes, combing through every page. Scrawls of names, headlines, maps, symbols I didn't understand. But one phrase appeared again and again. It shows what you fear most. Was that all this was? A reflection of terror? If so, why did its stories always come true? My hands shook as I flipped through the notebooks, searching for patterns. At last, I found a page torn halfway out, written hastily, as if he didn't want it read. I saw myself in it. I read my own death. That is when it won. My breath caught. Had he read too far? Had he given it the ending it needed? I stared at the stack of black rolls towering in the corner. If I kept reading, I would find myself there too. The question was no longer if it would happen. It was when. The next knock nearly broke me. I sat frozen at the desk, staring at the door. 3 raps. The sound rattled in my chest like a heartbeat. I didn't move, didn't answer. But the paper didn't need me to. It was already there, on the floor at my feet. Headline, obituary, a life forgotten. I couldn't bring myself to open it. I shoved it beneath the pile, hands trembling. But the words seared themselves into my skull. A life forgotten. Would that be me? Would anyone remember me once the paper had finished its work? I wandered the halls of the house, running my hands over the walls, whispering my own name to keep it alive, as if saying it out loud would protect me from vanishing into its pages. But deep down, I already felt it slipping. The paper wasn't just recording lives, it was erasing them. That night I dreamed of my father again. He sat at his desk, face hidden in shadow, papers stacked around him. He spoke without looking at me. "You opened it. That was your mistake." My throat tightened. "What do I do?" I whispered. His hand moved across the desk, sliding one page toward me. It was blank, but the edges smoldered, black ash curling upward. "You don't write on it," he said. "You don't read it. You end it." I reached for the page, but as soon as my fingers touched it, flames roared across the room. I jolted awake, gasping. The house smelled of smoke again, heavier than before. On the desk lay another paper, already unrolled. This one had no headline, just a single sentence written across the center. "The end is yours to make." I stared at it, heart pounding. For the first time, it wasn't telling me. It was asking. I didn't know how to answer. The blank space stared back like an open grave. I grabbed a pen, hovering over the black surface, but my hand refused to move. Every choice felt like a trap. If I wrote survival, would it twist into something worse? If I wrote death, would it be instant? The walls groaned around me, the house pulsing like a living thing. I screamed into the silence, slamming the pen down, refusing to mark the page. Instead, I tore it in half, shredding it until nothing was left but black strips. For a moment, the house went still. Silent. No smoke. No knocks. I sank to the floor, chest heaving, thinking maybe I had won. But when I looked up, every shredded piece was gone. In its place, the page had returned to the desk, whole again. And this time, the headline read, "The Refusal." The headline glared up at me, "The Refusal." It had written my choice before I even made it. I stumbled back, fists clenched, fury boiling inside me. Was that all it wanted? To mock me? To trap me in loops of choices I never had? I tore through the house, hurling stacks of papers into piles, kicking chairs, smashing lamps. Everywhere I turned, more pages appeared, rolling into existence like smoke forming from air. I screamed, my throat raw, my voice breaking against the silence. No matter how many I burned, ripped, or buried, they returned. The house was drowning in black. I shoved at the door again, but beyond it lay only endless dark. The void welcomed me, whispering promises of release. But I couldn't step through, not yet. Something held me back. The paper hadn't finished. And I realized, with a shiver, it wasn't me trapped inside the house. It was the house trapped inside me. The walls closed in tighter every day. Rooms stretched impossibly long, doors vanished behind me. I wandered like a prisoner in a maze built from memory. The office became the center, always pulling me back, and always the paper waited. This issue was different, though. Instead of a headline, it carried my name. Not the one I whispered to myself in the halls, but my full name, written in bold white letters across the top. Beneath it, an obituary already drafted. It described my life, my father's death, and the moment I picked up the first paper. It ended with the words, "Cause of death, yet to be determined." My vision blurred, rage and terror colliding. This was it. The final story, the one it had been leading me to since the beginning. I dropped the sheet onto the desk, refusing to read more, but the words were already burned into me. I stopped eating, stopped sleeping. Every time I closed my eyes, the house whispered louder, voices rising from the paper stacks. My father's voice, Clara Weiss's, others I didn't know. They begged, pleaded, warned. But the loudest voice was my own, echoing lines I hadn't spoken yet. The paper was writing me forward, moment by moment, until the ending fit. I tried to resist, locking myself in the bedroom. But the papers slid under the door, one after another, each one blank except for a single word. Jump. Over and over again. Hundreds of them carpeting the floor. I gathered them in trembling arms, hurled them into the hallway, but they seeped back through the cracks, piling higher. The floor disappeared under black. And as I waded through, the truth struck me cold. There was no choice left. The paper wanted one ending only. I climbed the stairs to the roof. The air was still, too still, the night frozen at midnight. The city stretched below, lights flickering faint, distant, unreal. I walked to the edge, heart hammering, the railing cool beneath my palms. Behind me, the door swung shut. When I turned, the paper was waiting there too, unrolled across the concrete. Headline, "The Last Step." My breath hitched, tears cutting down my face. Was this how it ended for all of us who read it? My father, Clara. Me. I closed my eyes. The visions came, my funeral, my broken body, the grief of strangers. I almost stepped back. But then another image flashed. A blank page, empty, waiting. Maybe that was the choice. Not to leap, not to obey, just to leave the story unfinished. I turned from the edge, trembling, and the rooftop dissolved into darkness. When I opened my eyes, I was back in the office, the desk, the chair, the black roll, waiting patiently. Only one page this time. I unrolled it with shaking hands. Headline: "The story ends here." No article followed. Just silence. Just white space. I stared at it, my breath shallow, my body trembling. Was this mercy, or the cruelest trick yet? I dropped the paper onto the desk, refusing to read further. For the first time since it began, I didn't obey. I left it there, untouched, and walked away, step by step, out of the office, down the hall, into the night. The house groaned behind me, but I didn't look back. The paper could write whatever it wanted now. I would not give it the ending it craved. If that meant vanishing, so be it. At least it would be my choice.